Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor and privilege to be amongst you today. My name is Kritika, and I serve as the Assistant Director for Academics at IC3 Institute. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all of our counselors present for the workshop on Navigating Careers with a Conscience, Rethinking Counseling in CBSE Schools. To begin our workshop today, I'd like to extend a welcome to Mrs. Neeti Shankar Sharma, Deputy Secretary for Media and PR at CBSE, to set the tone for our session.
Thank you, Kritika, and good afternoon and welcome to the respected principals, counselors, wellness teachers, distinguished speakers and panelists. Welcome to the third session of Transforming Schools Through Career Counseling, a series of 5 virtual workshops, and today we are into that third of that 5-part series. And today's session will focus on navigating careers with conscience, rethinking counseling in CBSE schools. It's a pleasure to have each of you here as we continue our journey towards empowering counselors with purpose-driven career guidance. We look forward to insightful discussions and actionable takeaways, as always, that will shape the future of educational counseling in CBSE school. We are honored to be joined by distinguished individuals who are at the forefront of reshaping educational frontiers in India. We have with us Dr. Vishwajit Saha. He is the Director of Skill Education at CBSE. Welcome, sir. He is a visionary whose insights into the educational reforms and skill development are instrumental in skilling landscape in our country. We are also privileged to welcome Mr. Sarji Varghese, the founder of Sunburned Straws, whose exemplified entrepreneurship with a conscious, inspiring us all to consider the societal impact of our career choices. And our expert panelists are here who will bring a wealth of knowledge with them. We have with us Ms. Gargi M, Director of Symbiosis Society of Schools, Pune, who leads initiatives in holistic education. And the best part is she herself is an educator, I think being a teacher since last 12 years and also a counselor. So a warm welcome to you, ma'am. We will also hear from Mr. Bhakti Shah, an esteemed outreach and counseling professional dedicated to guiding students towards fulfilling careers. And Mr. Devesh Verma, he's the head of Ola Foundation, whose commitment to social responsibility through educational initiatives sets a commendable example. Moderating our session, as always, would be Kritika, the Assistant Director, Academics at IC3 Institute, who will also bring her expertise and passion for transformative education here. Then again, I would just request, as I always do, please try to take the opportunity of interacting with our esteemed panelists here through the chat. We'll definitely have a Q&A at the end of the session, and we'll like to hear from you, have an interaction with you. Once again, I welcome all the speakers and participants to this forum, and let's embark on this journey together towards creating a brighter, more purposeful future for our students. Over to you, Kritika. The floor is all yours. Thank you so much, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for that wonderful and very kind welcome, Neeti ma'am, and for setting the tone for today. I'd now like to welcome our first keynote speaker, Dr. Vishwajit Saha. He's the Director for Skill Education at CBSE since December 2011 and leads the effort with curriculum design, textbook development, and organizing teacher training programs. With over a decade of experience as an assistant professor and head of computer science and engineering and the Government Engineering College in Agartala, he's edited over 75 CBSE books. Dr. Saha has played a pivotal role in drafting the National Skill Qualification Framework and the Credit Framework for Skills in Education. He has managed various development projects funded by the World Bank, MHRD, and the Ministry of Information Technology. Additionally, Dr. Saha has visited several educational institutions around the world to study the global best practices and incorporate that for transformative education in the Indian system. So, Dr. Saha, very, very warm welcome and over to you.
Thank you, Kritika. All the eminent panelists, especially Dr. Mitra, then Saji ji, and of course, Devesh ji and others, my colleague Niti, and all the respected counselors who have joined us virtually in this session. First of all, it's a great initiative by our media and PR department to propel and there are several kind of training usually board organize, but specifically for the counselor, I think this is one of its kind and first initiative board has taken to address the larger young population. Because many a time, as we understand after visiting the school, the counselor role is limited to a specific agenda. But when it comes to a career counseling, many a time it is misconcepted and rather misconceptualized in terms of putting multiple agency-led equation. And to do that, the primary role of counselor is sometimes is not that way well perceived by the student community. And even for that matter, parents are also, and especially if we classify the CBSE school in terms of its geographical presence in the urban pockets or rural pockets, many a time some level of misleading informations are very much under trial. So my request to all the counselor that you need to come up with your own agenda. And in school premises, there is a difference between the subject teachers or in terms of the climate settings of the school, the counselor's role, how it can be integrated with the subject teacher's role, that is very much essential. Because first of all, you need to be a good listener. At the same time, whatever you are going to discuss with the student, you need to look how many of your students are actively listening to you. So, and a matter of trust is always in between the counselor and the student and parents. So once again, I would like to request you, one way, the counselor quality, I may not focus on all the point because all the eminent speaker who are very much attached with the subject, they may justify. But broadly, what after interacting with several counselors, several principal, teacher, and student and parents, uh, I can conclude that some kind of energy, especially resilience, patience, and unless I spell it properly, so the message would be is a halfway communicated to one person's to one family. So my request would be that in the school ecosystems, how you can develop a model of trust so that student can share their concern in terms of their career choice, or rather, even if it is for many of the students, may not even going to come up with the baskets of career choice. Rather, how you can extract information related to their interest. That crucial information, when you are aware of, then you can guide. Or so-called counseling activities can be initiated. But for that also, the regular updation, especially with respect to the so-called technological interventions or economic development, cross-border terrorism, or even for that matter, how inter-country relationships. So one way we are focusing on global citizenship, other way the micro interventions with respect to individual country is foreign policy is a matter of concern for you. Maybe for time being, you can think why it is so required. Because you are dealing with the student, maybe for that matter, grade 9 to 12, who would be land up after UG or PG after 4 year or 6 year. So the overall perspective of economy in coming 10 years, how it is going to affect and impact the local community and global community, with that proper understanding, the education landscape can be designed for an individual student or individual family. Are you ready to do that? It's a huge challenge. At the same time, you are building a future of a nation. So this responsibility would be win-win situations for both you and on the other side of the coin, school or family. My last message before I conclude, that here, for any kind of counseling job, the relationship is very much important. As a counselor and all the eminent panelists, you have came across a report of Harvard University, which is the one of the longest study in many forum. I try to quote this repeatedly and intentionally. That is, for 75 years a longitudinal study, the outcome is very much interesting. Outcome, the first of all, how a individual be happy in life, or vis-a-vis the objective of the student and family at this stage while they are in school and college. They reported initially that everybody's dream would be how you can earn a huge money or get a good employment. So this kind of dream is there with every individual and every individual family. We are also not exception. But what matters is that relationships, to be happy in life, which matters a lot. So as a part of career counselor, you also have to focus on how you can create a happy mind or happy child or happy future. Thank you very much. I think with these words, let me pause here. My other co-panelist and other keynote speaker will definitely going to give a lot of food for thought to you all. And we are here to interact with you later in Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Saha. Thank you so much, Dr. Saha. That was incredible. We really had an opportunity to learn how your belief systems, your ethos has shaped what the CBSE systems are today. Especially very grateful for how you've introduced, life skills curriculums as a mandated component in the CBSE schools and made it a part of the core timetable, so that the systemic effort that you're talking about is happening as live transformation in schools. And I'm sure we're going to experience the impact of this over a couple of years, and as we see our students graduate and become employable, happy, thriving citizens. So thank you so much for laying the foundation for all of this transformation to happen, and for leaving us with the deep insight about not just the academic or technical parts of what a counselor needs to know, but also how much we need to prepare ourselves to be empathetic, kind, present listeners to transform the lives of our students. So very grateful to you for setting the tone with that. And thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll be with us for the session too, but very, very grateful to have your presence, sir. So now, as we continue, I would like to start a short context-setting presentation to give us an insight into how we are redefining the approach to career counseling, and especially when we talk about careers with a conscience. So just give me one moment. I'm bringing my presentation up. Okay. So one of the things that Dr. Saha also talked to us about today was about redefining or reimagining the approach to career counseling. a lot of times when we think about it, it's associated to one of three things. It's either that we do a psychometric test and help students to figure out exactly what they should do, either when they're in grade 10 or in grade 12, or it's restricted to a one-on-one counseling or one-on-one conversation between a counselor and a student, or a counselor, student, and a parent. And the third is that it has to happen with the student having one definitive answer that they leave with, that is received with the help of the counselor or others in the community who tell them how to make the choices that they can make. Now, the challenge with this is that we are making the child dependent to have to seek external support to know answers and rely on that one-time assessment outcome or one-time result that does not really account for how rapidly the world is changing or how quickly the child is going to change and grow as well. So instead of the test and tell approach of telling the child what to do or giving them a definitive answer at grade 10 or 12, we want to propose that we look at counseling slightly differently. Let's look at counseling as coaching to build students' self-awareness. What does that mean? Not just giving them an assessment that will give them a report of their qualities, strengths, skills, or aptitude, but looking at it more as asking them reflective questions. Okay, what kind of qualities do you have, or what interests you? What problem do you really care about that you wish to solve? Now, asking these questions repetitively, constructively, and in a structured way builds that thinking capability in them to know more about themselves and become confident in why they are the way that they are. So you want to coach them to build that competency and not give them definitive answers. The second is helping them to build 21st century employability and work-ready skills. Dr. Saha touched base on this in his presentation as well, to just really help students understand that as they're engaging in all kinds of activities, whether it's in school, whether it's at home, in their community, every time they participate in an activity, that is where they're cultivating a skill. Now, students often don't know what skill is associated to what type of activity. And secondly, they're not aware of the, meaning that they're not aware of the vocabulary associated to what skill they're developing in certain activities, or how that corresponds to various careers. Meaning, if I'm building, say, critical thinking or research abilities through participation in a debate competition, where are these skills being used in real world jobs? That correlation is not something that's automatically taught through our curriculum. So it's going to be really critical to help students to build that bridge, that thread of understanding, so they understand how skills are developed and how skills will be used in the future. The third is helping them to build awareness of careers and higher education pathways. Now, this one is really important because there is a plethora of opportunities available to students. A study showed that students are not aware of more than 7 to 9 options, but realistically, with the number of possibilities accessible to them today, we need to have a structured approach to giving them exposure to these options and helping them to understand how to refer to updated information or new information about careers in the world of work. Next is teach them to connect the dots. So every time we look at a career or a job, students are looking at it as, okay, what kind of remuneration can I get? What kind of organization can I work with? Where will I be based? And a lot of the external factors associated to it. But it's really important that we take a moment to look at the personal qualities, skills, and competencies needed for the day-to-day tasks associated to a job. Now, if we start looking at roles from that lens, then students will be able to map their own interests, their own skill sets, their own competencies and values to say, okay, do I have everything that I need to be successful and enjoy the day-to-day workings as well as the longitudinal growth and impact of this career? That's a great way for students to learn the skill of mapping their fit. And this is going to give them a tremendous opportunity to have a skill for life, because what this will do is no matter what happens in their external circumstances, right, they're going to know how to choose for themselves again. Even if the world of work changes or there is other unfortunate external circumstances, they will know how to switch or pivot to the next best option. So that's why we need to reimagine counseling from telling students what to do to empowering them with the capability to understand themselves, understand the world of work, and make an informed choice of what could be the best fit for them. And then no matter how old they are, they're going to be thanking you because you're going to have given them a tool that they can use forever. But the interesting thing is there are so many studies which are showing that the lack of structured career guidance is having implications at a national, institutional, and individual level. The International Labour Organization had a study which showed that there are 15% higher unemployment rates in countries which don't have a structured career guidance intervention because students are lacking employability to move from their school education into the world of work. So while they have a degree, they're not necessarily the right fit for the jobs that they're applying to, and therefore they're not getting opportunities that are right for them. There's also lower economic productivity. So the OECD report showed that when there is a skill mismatch between an individual and the jobs that they're working in, there is a general lethargy and inertia, which is not allowing for productivity and growth in that organization or in the industry or the nation as a whole. So the OECD report showed that there is a 10% lesser economic productivity and growth in regions where there is not structured career guidance interventions. And imagine that if people were in the right skill fit, then people will automatically take more initiative. They will come forth with innovative ideas. They're going to push the boundaries and want to contribute and thrive both personally for the organization and at a larger level as well. So this is a second area for why it's important and what kind of impact it's having at a national or economic level. The third is that a UNESCO study showed that there was a 20% dropout rate in schools that don't have structured career guidance intervention because students did not understand the correlation between what learning they were having at school and how it could benefit them in the future. Especially in the sample that they studied, wherever there was low aspiration, a lack of engagement, when the correlation was not built, as Dr. Saha said, the connection between what we're teaching in the class and how it will impact future careers. When that connection is lacking, students don't see purpose in their academics, and then there's a greater rate of dropout, as the study has shown. There's also an impact on mental health. So the Journal for Career Development showed that there was 30% greater anxiety and depression in those who felt career uncertainty, meaning that when there are these extraneous circumstances, right? Like imagine there's a pandemic, there is a layoff in the organization, or there is a recession going on, or even a natural calamity, and people have to restart their career journey from scratch. In situations like that, those who have received career guidance have felt more equipped to know how to pivot and therefore less anxious and less depressed because of the possibility of being laid off or not having opportunities accessible to them. But when that awareness is not there or the ability to choose is not there, the study had shown that that was leading to greater anxiety and depression. And lastly, in the Brookings Institute study, they showed that there was a 20% reduction in lifetime earnings, meaning the potential income that somebody could have had if they were working in the right fit career from the beginning would have meant that they are thriving based on their skill set, having faster growth, faster opportunities for higher pay. But because they're in that wrong fit from the beginning, the time lapse before they can find the right path for themselves means that they lost 20% potential income that they could have earned in their lifetime earnings. So these are some examples of national, institutional, and individual studies that have been done to show what is the impact of not having structured career guidance interventions in place. In India, if you look at it right now, there's a dearth of 15 lakh counselors that are required to support more than 320 million students. And therefore, this cannot be an individual task. And this is something that Dr. Saha touched base on. It has to be a school level, teacher level effort, or an administrator, school educator, leader. Everyone has to be involved in making this a transformative systemic effort, right? So one example is how do we use our classrooms to build a connection between the concept or chapter we are teaching and how it is applied into careers in the world of work. So that next time the child is not asking, okay, ma'am, where am I going to use algebra in my future? Or what is the point of studying photosynthesis in biology? There's going to be a much deeper appreciation and understanding of how these concepts are applied in careers. If the child who's playing video games at home knew that algebra was the foundation of coding used in video games, there's going to be a greater appreciation and interest for what they are learning. Secondly, we talked about this briefly before, but if we can look at how extracurriculars are helping students to build skills and personal qualities, give them the opportunity to learn that vocabulary, and then have the confidence to say, okay, when I participate in these activities, these are the skills I'm learning. Based on how well I'm doing in that activity, I know that these skills are my strengths and these are not my areas of strength. So that level of self-awareness also lends to a lot of self-confidence and self-awareness that will be the foundation for students to make informed choices in their future. Even something like community service, choosing the right project to work on, knowing which projects to choose, helps them to know what my values are, what I really feel strongly about. And the counselor is going to be the person who is central to this, who's the thread that helps them connect all of these dots. What are you learning in your class? What are you learning through these activities? What are you learning through community service? And helping them put that together in a structured and comprehensive way so that they're equipped to know themselves and make that informed choice we'd like them to make. And the best part is once we do integrate these interventions in our school, we have seen through the study at the IC3 Institute that there's been remarkable outcomes. One is we have seen improved academic engagement and performance in the classroom. We've seen students building future-ready skills. The school having transformations in systems and pedagogies, meaning how they are teaching the subjects that they're teaching in classes. We've had someone do a lesson plan which has a compulsory component of that career linked to the chapter or skills linked to that chapter. And then we've had a study on improved mental health and well-being linked to career counseling. I'm just going to show you some quick stats in a moment, but before that, I just wanted to give you a highlight. We've also seen how it empowers schools from marginalized communities, where, especially in communities where the primary occupation was agriculture or running a mom and pop store, students from that village who had never left before for the first time did counseling interventions and chose to go to a technical and vocational college or choose pharmaceutical industries to pursue it for the first time. And those are breakthroughs that are happening at a very foundational levels in various communities. And also there's improved awareness of roles in sustainable development goals. This is going to be a very critical theme today, and I'm going to talk about it as I conclude this, but here's a quick overview of the stats. As far as the impact of academic engagement goes, we saw 68% of students reported greater interest in their understanding of academic learning as soon as we made this connection between careers and classroom learning. The second is 53% of the students reported that it improved their academic performance because when they understood why they're studying what they're studying, there was a greater interest or effort and focus in their academic work, and that translated into an improvement in their scores as well. There was also building employability skills. So they were understanding the skills required for both soft skills and technical skills that are required for a career pathway. And they knew the subjects that they would be requiring to pursue a certain career pathway. Now, this is developed through self-directed research, not with somebody teaching them how to do it or telling them how to do it, but the integration of these counseling interventions in the school has helped them to build these skills. There's also a 41% increase in them identifying companies that work in a particular industry or sector or understanding the relevant requirements for various undergraduate programs. All of this coming through self-directed research. We also did a quick study of how this impacted their self-awareness and mental health. And we saw that 64% of students reported increased self-confidence and 61% of them reported greater self-awareness of their own personal strengths, qualities, interests, and values. And finally, this is one of the quotes I really like from one of the girls who's a student at, in Tata Chem DAV Public School in Midhapur, Gujarat. She said it helped her to identify negative or illogical thinking patterns and overcome feelings of hopelessness and helplessness. So what we saw in that Journal of Career Development study, we saw as a live example of a student experiencing that alleviation of stress and anxiety by having greater understanding of the possibilities that are accessible to her and her innate potential to be able to pursue those opportunities as well. And I'm just going to skip to the last component because I want to spend a minute on this. When we do these counseling initiatives, we really encourage them to think about how are your career choices also creating a positive social impact in the world? Or how is it advancing the goals of one of the sustainable development goals, that are the 17 SDGs that are laid out? And 60% of the students said they had a greater understanding of how their own career choice will play an important role in advancing an SDG. And this is so, so important because I think today career decision making has to be far beyond what is going to be right for me, but also how we can be conscientious citizens that contribute meaningfully and create positive social impact in society. And our esteemed speakers who are going to follow today are going to be sharing more about this. But I'd like to pause here. Thank you all so much for listening through the context setting. And I'm now going to take a moment to introduce our very eminent second keynote speaker of the day. He's going to be sharing a lot of insight on how we can build purpose in students and how it's translated into an incredibly successful business story as well. So I'd like to now welcome Mr. Saji Varghese. He is the founder of Sunbird Straws, which is an innovative startup that produces biodegradable drinking straws from fallen coconut leaves. He is an associate professor of English at Christ University in Bangalore and discovered the potential of coconut leaves for making straws during a morning walk in 2017. His invention aims to reduce plastic waste and provide employment opportunities for rural women in India. His company has received significant recognition, including the Shrestha Udyami Guru Puraskar in 2020 from the Entrepreneurship Development Institute of India and the Best Innovation for Social Impact Award at the Climate Launchpad Award in Netherlands. Sunbird Straws has sold over 20 million straws globally and aims to expand its manufacturing operations internationally to further reduce its carbon footprint and create more employment opportunities. So, Mr. Saji Varghese, over to you.
I'm not able to, yeah. So, good evening, a very good afternoon to everyone. I'll just share my slide as well. So, is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, very good afternoon, and thank you, Kritika, for that introduction. But I would like to also set the context, considering the talk that I am delivering today. My claim to be here would not just be as a founder of Sunbird Straws, but I started my career in a CBSE school, and I used to be teaching middle school and also later 10th standard for around 3 years. And after that, I started my career in the college. But then what sets the context here? I was listening to the eminent speaker earlier, and also to Kritika right now. So uh, there is a lot of emphasis today on how we as individuals, as citizens, we are actually global citizens, and we cannot think in silos. We have to think in a much larger context, and that is where we really need to rethink education, and we need to rethink counseling. And I, as an English teacher, I also had to think more critically about what would my career mean. I thought I would be teaching for another 15-20 years, and we will be meeting hundreds of students day in and day out in different semesters. That's where I wanted to make more meaning as an individual, as a teacher in a classroom. And the same goes with our students who are very aspirational, and that's where I took this detour to the path of innovations. And the whole objective of this innovation was not just about building a startup or making a product. It goes a little deeper, where you want to make more impact. And particularly in a country like India, where we have this large inequity, a major part of our population do not have access to even the basic amenities. And then there is this very small minority which has all the amenities of life. So this actually disturbed me. And also, when I started hearing stories about someone from Stanford would come and solve a problem in rural India, or very recently during one of the opportunities I got with regard to my innovation, I had this opportunity to go to Switzerland. I was speaking to this national from Switzerland, who said he's trying to make machines to make aloo parathas. So that really got me thinking about we the major chunk of our student community is actually focused on a very narrow spectrum of accomplishment, and making, for instance, we know all the chaos that is happening in NEET, right? It's because everyone is just perforced into a particular narrow spectrum of accomplishment, as if there is nothing else beyond and other than that. So that's where I spoke to our vice chancellor, and I said I want to do something in the area of design for social entrepreneurship. And that's how we run this platform called the DESI at Christ University. It's called Design and Innovation for Social Entrepreneurship, where students from multiple disciplines come together, and we identify problems and see. Not everyone comes here with an aim of becoming an entrepreneur, but they try their hands at different things. Some might be working on supply chain, some might be working on just brand building strategy and all of that. So Desi is actually, and I always say life is a box of chocolates when it comes to innovations. You'll never know what those unexpected surprises will come back to you.
Sajid sir, so sorry to interrupt, but your
Yeah.
video, your screen sharing is not visible. If you could please stop and reshare it
Okay,
again.
just a second. I'll just try again. I'll try sharing again.
Sure, sir.
Yeah, sorry about that.
While Sajid sir is bringing his screen up, I would just like to take a moment and say this: you're in for a treat. I think this is a session that leaves you feeling thought-provoked and excited about the possibilities of what we can do with our students, and also how limitless it can be if we open up our imagination.
Is it visible now?
Not yet, sir.
There's some issue. Actually, it says it's sharing. Just a second. Earlier it was, right, when we were testing it out?
Yes, sir.
Window or enter screen. No?
We'll just give it a moment, sir. I think it's going to come up.
No, not yet.
No, I'm
But
not able to see it. If others could see it, if you could please let me know.
can others? No, I don't. But it says it's sharing a screen. Let's check.
Kritika, can you get this particular thing on WhatsApp and share it from your end if possible?
Yes, sir. That'll be yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sajid sir, if you'd like to drop it to me on WhatsApp, I can bring it up. Or even via email, whichever is convenient.
Just a second. I'll just try one more time.
Sure.
It should be because, yeah, now I think it should. Is it?
So your screen is coming up, but it's blank. So I think it might be easier if you shared it with me.
Okay.
I think these technical glitches are a part of our
Learning
lives
stage.
now, and it also has a very interesting take to it that when we are sitting here in a session where we talk, it's about counseling. And it's about the calmness and the patience and how we deal with the situation. So I think this in itself is also an interesting aspect to it, that on a live streaming we are into a technical glitch and how we'll be able to take that up and move forward. So I think Kritika can play her moderator role and try to put in some anecdotes to us in the meantime, or we can have somebody who like to come in and put in some words in the meantime.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, please. That would help me.
Yes, absolutely. Sajid sir, please feel free to share it with me. I'm happy to bring it up. But in the meantime,
yeah,
as we were moving through some of the context setting, I just wanted to share a couple of the stories that were very, very impactful for us to see. There is a place in Jharkhand called Bokaro where we had a school that was doing like a counseling initiative. And in that school, again, the agriculture was the primary occupation of choice for a lot of the students. And it was so interesting that in a situation like that, after having done an extensive research project on what career pathways were accessible to the student and what skill set they had and innate qualities and values that they had, we found that that child was able to not just choose pharmacy as the right fit career, but apply that in a context of social impact by inviting this. There was a COVID camp going on at that time, and pharmaceutical students were being called in as interns to support some of the COVID camps that were running. So this student, through the project, was able to identify what they were good at and not only pursue their path of choice, but also go and create impact in the community. So that was a remarkable example of how this can create shifts in regions, in individual choices, and also go on to benefit society as a whole. We also had another instance where there was a fundamental shift in a community's belief systems being transformed. So in Chandauli in Uttar Pradesh, a significant portion of the student population at one of the Jawahar Navodaya Vidyalayas was signing up for primarily either engineering or medicine or going through the coaching centers to get into, the JE or the NEET. And while a set of students were the right fit for that role, a couple of them were not, and they were going through the classic cycle of pressure. So in that situation, this counseling initiative really helped the school to create workshops, seminars, and activities with the students and parents that ended up meaning that I think he said about 30% of students that would have typically enrolled in that coaching institute stopped that. And imagine what a massive shift in mindset that is for parents who are also coming from the belief system that this is the only viable career pathway with economic potential for my child. So these are two really powerful examples of how it can create shifts at a community level. And it's so important to have these, interventions integrated right deep in our school's belief system with the principal, the teacher, the counselor, all working together to create these outcomes. So I think that is a really important piece. I want to just stop here and check if Saji sir is able to share, or otherwise I'm happy to share another interesting anecdote as well.
I just sent it, Kritika. I think it will take some time for it to reach you. It must have reached you, but downloading might take some time.
Sure, sir. Would you like to just
Yeah.
start your address and I'll bring up the presentation in a moment?
Yeah. But I need those slides anyways, so you can
Yes, sir.
continue with your. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just bringing up Saji sir's presentation. And in the meantime, just one last thing I just wanted to share is one of the things that makes this really powerful in the schools where I shared an example that I did share was that counseling interventions were not done in isolation, meaning it was not done as a one-off activity or a one-time workshop. It was done as a structured, sequenced curriculum that helped the school students to basically experience counseling from an early age in an age-appropriate and well-structured and transitional way. So there's a couple of activities that they can do in grades 6 and 7 that help them to build self-awareness. As they come into grade 8, they can understand the correlation between self-awareness, their choices, and careers in the world of work. As they progress to grade 9 and 10, they can get exposure into opportunities in the world of work and understand, get introduced to these options through industry talks, through career expos, visits to industries, all sorts of opportunities to build that career awareness and exposure. And then finally, when they come to grade 11 and 12, they can get exposure to higher education options and come into the decision-making mode of collectively harnessing their learning and experiences to make the right choice for them. So thinking about counseling as not a one-time activity, but as a curriculum-based intervention would also be something that is really helpful in setting the tone for how we can create transformation in our schools through counseling. Okay, with that, I have Saji sir's presentation ready and I'm just bringing it up right now. And over to you, Sajid sir.
Okay. I had actually hidden a few slides because the duration was much shorter, but maybe you'll get the full presentation. We can skip a few of it so that we are within the time.
Sure, sir. No worries. You can go ahead. I'm just bringing up the screen.
Yeah, so we also wanted to be a fun place where students feel holistically engaged, and we have this platform running at our university uh, after the college hours. So students were actually interested in trying to explore new things, actually turn up, and that exactly was a testimony when, like 2 days back, all the first years came and we oriented them. So almost 140 students registered for this DAISY. You can change the slides to. Yeah, so this is the platform that we run at our university. It's called Design and Innovation for Social Entrepreneurship. Next slide, please. So we can skip these stories. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, we can skip. So what is at the core of what we do at Christ University under is empathy. So as long as we are talking about these SDG goals where we want equity, we want better empowerment to women, we want clean water, and we want clean air. So at the core of it is empathy, which goes putting ourselves in the shoes of other people. So this was very important, and this is at the core of what we do. And our students really need to be sensitized towards this aspect of empathy. And I always tell, in a place like Christ University, where many students come from very well-to-do families, most of the time, they are not even aware of another India that exists. And a major part of my career, I was in a very remote village, and then when I came to Christ University, I just felt, maybe we are all caught up in securing our own lives from every aspect, and that is where we forget to build in this core value, that is empathy in ourselves. So that is very important that we do at Desi. Next slide, please. Yeah, so yeah, we can. So very important things are, you have to have this observation. I always tell that this looks like a quality which we always possess, but I always say that after being in a very familiar place for a long time, we cease to observe. So observation is very important in this entire journey of innovation. And next is that we need to also, yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, we also need to connect and combine. That's what I'll explain through a real example now. Next slide. Yeah, and then I always teach the students that we need to have this creative confidence, that is an appetite for failure. When you are trying to find something new, you are bound to fail. I would not use the word fail, but what is not working several times before we finally figure out what works. Will we be able to play this video, if we can? So this is an example of what we did at Desi initially. Now this person, of course, there will be a bit of a lag in the video. Now, when we students, we observed this person. He's a staff in our university, and he had been working here for past 9 years. And the lesson of observation, for instance. So he was marking the football field at that time. This is way back before the COVID, and I stopped and I asked the students to observe this. So, and the students observed that he had to bend every time to mark the football field, and it took him 1 hour 35 minutes to mark the entire football field. And I asked the students to count the number of times he has to bend, and we counted and counted. We had to wait there for 1 hour 35 minutes, and he had to bend 600 times. That's where I gave the challenge to the students, that I told them that I'll give you 3,000 rupees, I'll give you 3 days, can you bring a smile on this person's face? His name is Malik Arjun. And we went and spoke to him, we understood the problem. And the next day, which was a Sunday, the student leader, his name is Chirag. You can change the slide, Tika. Next slide. Yeah. So this boy made a small tentative proof of concept, and in 3 days, we were able to give this particular machine to that person. So this is a field marker which the students of our university made, and instead of having to bend 600 times, it just came down to 0 times. and what took 1 hour 35 minutes now gets finished in just 6.5 minutes. So this itself shows that if you are empathetic enough, if you are observant enough, then you can figure out the problems that are around us, and then we can come up with great solutions. We ourselves can find great solutions. We won't have to wait for somebody from Harvard and Stanford to come and solve our problems. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. And then we at Desi, we just realized that if we could solve a problem for somebody in our own family, we can then have our self-confidence that we can actually look at bigger challenges, global problems. And that's where, this was again in 2017, there was somebody who brought to our notice that single-use plastic straws are such a huge problem and a huge menace to our environment. It is polluting marine life and so on and so forth. And then the next day when I came to the university, there were a lot of coconut trees in our college, and my eyes fell on a fallen coconut leaf. And I can never overemphasize the need to observe closely. And we just saw some fallen coconut leaves, which I think people everywhere see all the time. But when I saw these coconut leaves, I just thought I can try to make straws out of them. And that is how, after a few experiments later, in fact, after 1 week, I could make a singlet a straw. And then we worked on it, and finally, after around 3,000 hours of work, we developed the world's first drinking straws made from fallen coconut leaves. You can show the next slide, Kritika. Yeah, these are the straws that we made, and we were the first in the world to do it. After that, I'm happy to tell you that the very student who made that field marker for Mallikarjun to mark the football field, he went on to do space engineering from UK. But after he came back, he contacted me again. And when I told him that I had developed these straws, and I said, I'm looking to make small devices, small machines to make these straws. If we can make these straws, we can actually employ large number of women. And that's exactly what happened. You can change the slides. I can very quickly show the two slides. Yeah. So Chirag and the other two students joined me in this, and we formed a private limited company, and we made all these machines ourselves. And we now they have next slide, please. We have upgraded our technology. Next slide also. Yeah, now we have this conveyor system we made, and in fact, last month we got a patent granted for our product, process, and technology. We have also filed independent patents in the US and also in the European Patent Office in Sri Lanka. I felt, as a part of our entire counseling, we have to give the confidence to the students that not that they always have to seek employment in companies which are created by the risk takers in US and other countries. We ourselves also can create great companies for ourselves, and we can solve global problems. So I'm very happy to tell you that with these machines, we have now deployed in five villages in Karnataka, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu, and now we have provided employment to 107 women, and we will very soon be employing 500 women. And these straws are now sold in Bangalore primarily and in Goa, and also have been supplied to 10 countries, and there's a huge demand for this product. So this gives us a satisfaction that from a university, a small product developed, and then our students develop the technology which gets deployed in the villages. And the women, we never ever say that the women are at the receiving end of our generosity. In fact, they are on a level playing field, and we call them the champions of sustainability, because they are the ones who make the straws and prevent the burning of the leaves. And these straws are sold globally, so we call them the champions of sustainability, and not that they are just laborers working at the company. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so this was the patent granted. I think all of this is going to add a huge value in our schools, if we can give the confidence to the students that they can come up with original ideas which will be unique in the world itself. So this is our unit, our in Tuticorin. In fact, in last week, now we have grown from 12 women employed. Now there are 30 women who are employed here. Next slide, please. And a lot of youth in the villages are now employed, and it prevents the migration of these youngsters to the cities, because they find employment in the villages itself. They get a decent income collecting the raw material for us. Next slide. Yeah, these are the women who are now employed. We have a hub and spoke model. So the women in the areas where the coconut trees are available, they collect the dead leaves. And moreover, these are naturally fallen coconut leaves, which is an agri waste. So they segregate the good ones from the bad, and they send it to us to make the straws. Next slide. Yeah, and also these women are now trained to manage the machines. They do the minimum maintenance required for it. And this is Sandeep on the screen. He is also a student. He actually is now doing his PhD in economics, but he also decided not to go for any jobs. So he now heads technology training and operations at our company. Our company is called Brownwood Aggregation Innovation. It's a private limited company, and our product is called Sunbird Straws. So Chirag and Sandeep are two students from Christ University who are co-founders with me, and it gives a lot of satisfaction. Next slide, please. Yeah, and very always very proud to show pictures like these where our straws are used at a very elite wedding in Italy, and the distributor who took the straws from us now wants 2.6 million straws every quarter, and that gives a real big boost to this entire opportunity to create more employment in the villages in India through an innovation done at an educational institution. Next slide, please. Yeah, this was our trip to Nicobar Islands. Now we are now invited to Nicobar to set up these production centers for the tribals in Nicobar, and we visited there. In fact, after the COVID, we went there, and we are going to deploy these new machines this year, particular year. Yeah, next slide, please. The next slide, you can change this. Uh, yeah, these are the Nicobari tribals who are very excited about this product because they had never seen something like this. And these Nicobari families, they live in groups of 30 to 40 people. So they are very excited because they don't have to work anywhere. We will set up the entire production center, and our production system requires 30 women in a particular cluster. So it works for each of these families in Nicobar Islands, and the raw material is available in abundance. And there will be the tourist hotspot where our straws will be sent eventually. Yeah, next slides. You can skip this. Yeah, you can change this. Also, I'm very happy to show this. The letter which is written on the right of your screen. I want to and emphasize this because this is actually a letter from the University of Pennsylvania. So they had come to know about our product, and they wanted to keep our straws in their material resource library. So there is a very prestigious library at the University of Pennsylvania. It is a Fisher's Material Resource Library. So I'm very happy to tell you that our straws are now fully indexed and kept at a resource library in the University of Pennsylvania for them to study. So we don't always have to look west for great research to happen. It's time now that West looks at us also and our students for the remarkable research that we do in our own educational institutions. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about that. Yeah. Next slide, please. I just want to emphasize this as well. Now, Sandeep, who is actually an economics student, he was the one who developed these writing pens from coconut leaves. So it doesn't even matter which core domain you are from. You can be from any field, but if you have a strong intent, you can make a big difference. So Sandeep is the inventor of the world's first writing pens made from fallen coconut leaves. So an economics student. Yeah. Next slide, please. And then these are my proud moments when Chirag, who joined, in fact, Chirag, after he finished his space engineering from UK, he had a great job offer from Germany. But he refused that job offer and decided to be the head of innovations management. In fact, last month we have appointed him as the CEO of our company. So he's the CEO of our company, and he won the Youth Ecopreneur Award by the United Nations. So he was in Mongolia. He received this award, and it was a proud moment for all of us. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, and this was another award we won in the same month. This was in Switzerland, and after we won an award for our product, Chirag and Sandeep, they flew to Switzerland. It was a proud moment for a teacher and student to share the stage together on an international platform, and we won the Mass Challenge Switzerland Award. So this is what has given us a lot of visibility. Now we are getting huge demand from different countries. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, and again, very quickly, I want to show Kritika. Am I available? Can I be seen on the camera?
Yes, yes, sir.
So if you can see, this is a pandanus leaf. I just brought it again from our campus today. So this is a pandanus leaf on which I researched, and I could actually extract a thin, transparent cuticle from the leaf. Now this is again first in the world. This patent got published last month under PCT, that is a global patent. And from with this cuticle, I'm able to. You can change the slide. Uh, yeah. This is a leaf which I brought. Next slide, please. Yeah, these are the straws that we make from the cuticle of this pandanus leaf as well, and these can stay in beverages for more than 100 hours. And the best part of it is you get lots of surprises. A dentist from Australia called us up, and he wanted to use these tubes for the dental procedures. They use plastic tubes to suction out saliva from the mouth during their surgeries, and they wanted to use biodegradable straws. So they have asked, so this was something which we did not anticipate. So the point I'm trying to make, the first point is that though I'm an English teacher, no one stops me from trying experiments in botany. And I could extract a cuticle, a very water resistant cuticle from the leaf of these pandanus leaves. And then without my expectation, we suddenly realize that there are new use cases for our product. So these are the kind of unexpected surprises which come when you launch into this, unpredictable world, but an exciting world of innovations. And this is what our students are also very excited. That's why I said, yesterday 122 students registered for this platform, where we have no attendance, no one is forced to come, and that too, it is happening after the college hours. So if 120 students are energized and charged up to come after college hours, that just shows that how much of a space our students need to engage themselves holistically, right? So this is very important for schools also to understand that we need to create these spaces where they are engaged holistically and they are given this freedom to explore this world of innovations. So by and large, this is what I would want to tell. Of course, there are several stories which we are doing amazing innovations. Not I, but the students are doing amazing innovations. We are now make straws from the pineapple leaves also. And yesterday, a group of biotechnology students are now trying to make cattle feed pellets from pineapple leaves. So, there are large possibilities if we can just provide enough platform for our students to do all of this. Yeah, that is what. And Kritika, maybe I just want to show the last slide where I'm having happy slides. Yeah, this I would like. No, I'll not, we don't have time, right? So, Kritika, I'll stop here. Before this, yeah, before earlier slides, that Indian oak leaf which you showed. Yeah, this is again a very proud moment for us. I don't know, Kritika, whether I showed this to you during our recent interaction. This is our order we got from United Nations for the pens that we made. So now United Nations 15 days back had ordered 60 pens for an international conference of ambassadors at Geneva, and they used our pens in their at United Nations. And after they used the pens, they asked us to be on their vendor list. So we are now on the official vendor list of United Nations. So all of this, I would like to share our success story, not as a success story, but just to give all of us that self belief that if we really try, we can come up with amazing things which can actually change not only our society, but also we can have solutions which the world wants. So I'll stop at this, Kritika, because we are running short of time. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for a very, very inspiring and exciting note to let students know that there's so much power in multidisciplinary learning, in innovative thinking, in students using empathy to develop, to create social entrepreneurship opportunities. I think that's been one of my biggest takeaways in this is how students can be creators and not just people that are seeking opportunities elsewhere. So thank you for setting a stage to show how it's possible to start that journey in a classroom and then to create a scalable impact across the world with a very small, simple idea that can transform. So thank you so much for setting the tone with that.
Thank you.
And with that, thank you, sir. And with that, I'd like to bring us to the second part of our learning session for today. So we have three incredible panelists who are going to be joining us in sequence, and we're going to be learning a lot about understanding opportunities in the world of work in the social sector and how we can incorporate all of this in a systemic approach in our schools. So I'd first like to welcome Ms. Bhakti Shah. She's got a bachelor's degree from psychology in Ferguson College and a master's in international journalism from Westminster, UK. With over 15 years of experience in K-12 education, she's worked across guidance, edtech, and universities in her career. She believes that universities are not destinations, but they're knowledge ecosystems that can build capacity and skills to help communities evolve and progress. And higher education institutions must act as a bridge between K-12 and industry and the real world of work to create the next generation of skilled, empathetic global citizens. And she conducts workshops and sessions regularly for teachers, school leaders, and students and parents on the changing landscape of higher education and the future world of work. So, Bhakti, I'd like to start by asking you. In the first hour, we've talked a lot about the critical need for career guidance interventions and how we can prepare students for the future world of work. So now, given how rapidly the industry is evolving, can you share some context on what the world of work is going to look like when our students step into it? And specifically, can you share more about the upward trend in social impact careers? Because this is an area that I think we're still coming to learn more about. So I'll hand it over to you to give us more context on that.
Thank you so much, Kritika. I hope you can all hear me and see me.
Yes, absolutely.
I hope. All right, perfect. Okay. So, big hello and good afternoon to everyone who's watching us. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with IC3 and some incredible learning opportunities for teachers, principals, and everyone in the space of education. So, thank you, Kritika, Ganesh, Neha, and everyone for this platform. I think when we started talking about this, and I know I'm very conscious of time, so we have 15 minutes and a lot of ground to cover. And seemingly your question is very simple, but you know that I have only a 16 slide answer to your question. So I think to understand what the future of work looks like, it's important to ask ourselves a fundamental question. Yeah, that is me when I had blonder hair. That's not me anymore. But I think to answer your question, Kritika, we have to first ask ourselves, and that's where I'd like to go on to the first slide, which is if you were to describe the world that you live in one word, what would it be? This is a question for everyone who's joining us. If you can put in your responses on the chat, someone is going to read them out. One word to describe the world we live in. According to you, what's that one word? And when you start seeing the responses, you will realize that obviously it's a mirror of how we look at the world that we live in and where we are heading. You know, while the responses come in, I also want to tell you that I have been doing this workshop or I have such interactions with students, with teachers, all age groups, basically. And it's very interesting that the one word that comes up the most is unpredictable. I don't know what our responses are saying right now on YouTube or wherever it is that we're collecting the responses.
We see,
Kritika,
we see a couple of responses are VUCA, thriving, beautiful, honesty, changing, peaceful, roller coaster with a hyphen.
Yes.
And beautiful, changing, miracle. Yeah, these are some of the responses.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so, I think it's very much in trend with what I have seen in most of my workshops. There are extreme responses. There are people who have an extremely positive thing to say, which is great. The world is beautiful. It's miraculous. It's a wondrous place. But then there's also equally the uncertainty that we're always surrounded by. Did we know that the pandemic was going to hit us, our civilization in our time and change our lives upside down completely? We didn't know that, and it happened, right? So the world has become unpredictable. Technology is advancing at a speed that we cannot absolutely wrap our heads around. We had no idea about a year ago or even 8 months ago what ChatGPT or OpenAI was. And here we are now. It has changed so much in our world. With that being said, and we can go on to the next slide. With that being said, you know, when you don't know what the world is going to be like, how are you going to prepare for it? So if you can move on to the next slide, Shalaka. Thank you. So if you don't know what the world is going to be like, how do you prepare for it? And in one word, the answer is skills. And I'll tell you why. It's not just something that is a buzzword, skill building or focus on skill development, skills over degrees. In my career, in my experience, the conversation around skills is unprecedented. It's at an unprecedented all-time high in the world that we live in right now. If you look at your screen, you will see some very interesting facts from the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report. And this is a report that is released every year in May. And this report is from May 23. And the World Economic Forum is the world's foremost body on policy and decision making, and it advises governments and organizations and industry. It's a very, very powerful body. Okay, it's a global body. It's a policy think tank. And the World Economic Forum releases this report every year. And this year it was a 257-page report. I read it cover to cover because it's an area of my interest and it's also something to do with what I do generally in life. And for the first time in the history of this report, the World Economic Forum actually featured an entire section on skills. Okay, they've never done that before. This was the first time ever that there was an entire section on skills. And 800 companies were surveyed for this report. These 800 companies employ over 11 million individuals worldwide, and they cover every economy and every territory that you can imagine. So this is as globally representative as it gets. And based on the survey report, the World Economic Forum actually came out with a list of the top 50, 75 skills that these 800 companies value the most in their future workforce. Okay, that's why, remember what I said, if the future is unpredictable, the only thing you can really bank on is not really your degree, but it's the skills. Okay, now connecting skills to the fact that this is the first time ever the World Economic Forum has come up with a set of skills that these employers are looking for in their future workforce, which is essentially your students. If we move to the next slide, you will see that these are some of the top skills that the World Economic Forum has, kind of garnered from the survey that they put out there. Some of these skills are familiar, okay? I'm guessing most of us have heard of, of course, tech literacy, leadership, creative thinking. There's a lot of hoo-ha about creative thinking, problem solving. These are skills that transcend ages, and rightly so. But there are certain skills here which are brand new and they don't necessarily mean what you think they mean. I don't have the time to get into great detail, so I'll pick maybe one or two skills here to tell you what I mean. If you look at the skill here called social influence, okay, when I ask people what they think social influence as a skill is, a lot of them say the ability to influence people around you, right? Or the ability to impact people around you. Rightly so. But don't forget, the world we live in is completely online to a large extent. So in this context, employers are actually talking about social skills in the digital world. They're not talking about interpersonal social skills. Employers increasingly value those who have strong social media networking skills. And this might seem far-fetched to you, but it's a fact. Because a brand can make a brand and a good brand rub-off can happen. So you can go and do more research about it in your own time. But I want to leave you with that thought. The other skill, which otherwise is considered a value, is integrity. A lot of us have grown up considering things like empathy, integrity as values, not skills. But now they are considered skills which can be cultivated, which can be honed. And anything that goes from a value to a skill clearly has some kind of a science that's been decoded behind it, where people think like this is a learnable thing. You can learn it, you can hone it. All right. With that, we'll move on to the next slide. So just think about these skills. Now, when I'm coming to the social impact careers in just a minute, but you have to understand the context that the world that we live in is changing. All right. And therefore, the kinds of jobs that are going to come up and the skills that are required are also very, very different. These are some of the careers which already exist, but they seem futuristic to us because we are still, I think, about 5 years behind in our understanding of what's actually going on the ground. And when I say we, I'm talking about school education or K-12 education, and I count myself in that as well, that it's hard to keep up with the extremely rapidly changing trends in jobs and industries. And so by the time we realize something is happening, it's already old news there, but it's new for us. So these jobs already exist. And look at these jobs: organ creator, algorithm bias auditor, all right, human machine teaming manager, neuromorphic hardware engineer. And if you Google each one of these careers, they are mind blowing. They are absolutely mind blowing. And they are not science fiction. Okay, everyone's heard of Tony Stark, Iron Man. Well, um, Tony Stark was able to transform himself because of a technology that is freakishly similar to neuromorphic hardware engineering, which is essentially a chip trying to mimic the human brain. Okay, and all those years ago when it came out, we were like, oh, this is science fiction, it's fantasy. No, this is now a reality. This technology exists. There's a lot of other technology that exists which has not hit the common masses, but it's there, right? And it's changing the way the world works. But as the world progresses and as we make more tech advancements, the one thing that every one of us realizes is the more technology that we discover and invent, the more need there is for human connection. Okay? The more need there is for us to question and evaluate what is human and what is machine. And so their value systems of the world that we live in are changing very, very rapidly. If we go on to the next slide, I'll be able to tell you that careers with a conscience, okay, in the next 5 or 7 minutes, maybe I have 10. Careers with a conscience, if you see the tagline when I was creating this slide, I was like, the myths, the realities, and everything in between is what I'm going to try to cover in the next 10 minutes and hopefully leave you with enough food for thought to seriously go back and do your own research and change your mind perhaps. So what are careers with a conscience? We can move on to the next slide. Essentially, careers with a conscience, they are, those where your individual, skills, where an individual puts their skills and strength to work in a way that is aligned with purpose. Okay, and it contributes to solving some social challenge, whether it is by mitigating negative impact, which is doing less harm, reducing harm, or by doing more good. If it sounds complicated, let me make it very, very simple. A social impact career or a career with a conscience is something that aligns your own higher purpose and your own ethos as an individual with something that is going to have a positive impact on the society around you or reduce some negative impact of the society around you. All right? I hope that's not too complicated. Now, when we think of careers with social impact, we are very conditioned because in popular culture, in movies, you will see that, oh, koi jhola leke ghum raha hai. If they are from an NGO, there's this stereotypical image that we have that they have to be dressed a certain way, they have to talk a certain way, they're very minimalistic. And while it might be true, because a lot of people who work in social impact sectors are committed to the environment, they're committed to sustainability, they're committed to the larger good, they might adopt those principles in their own lives, and that's why they may dress differently. But the fact is that that's not the whole story. Okay, the key features of a social impact career, or when you look at a career, how do you spot whether it's going to have any social impact or not? And nobody tells you that, oh, by the way, this is a social impact career. Every career has social impact. Every career does, right? So when you're talking about social impact, you can't say, yes, every career has a social impact, so every career is a social impact career. No. Every career has a social impact, but not every career is a social impact career. There is a difference. So how do you spot those? I think some of the features, and if we can move to the feature slide, the next one, These are some of the features of a social impact career. One, it has to have purpose. There's a deliberate effort to make a positive impact in society. That's a deliberate thing. It's front and center of the career. It's got a broader scope. It's, it could span multiple sectors, including not-for-profit, for-profit, government, public service organizations. It could be across any industry. There is an alignment with personal values. So person's values actually matter in that career. That's also a very nuanced feature of a social impact career. It addresses some social issue and the impact is measurable. Okay. So while the definition of impact may vary, these careers will typically aim to create some tangible positive outcome, which is very contrary to what a lot of us think. Social impact careers are, acha kar what is acha? What's the benchmarking of acha? How do you measure acha? So these social impact careers are very, very focused on making sure they're able to measure acha, good, there's a diversity of roles there. And we'll talk more about it as we go along. But last but not the least, it's also somewhere most of these careers will be connected to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So all of us know, or if you don't, you should go and look this up. The UN SDGs, there are about 17 of them. And as a civilization, as humankind, the United Nations has given us a direction on the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, which we should be focusing on as people. And every social impact career will align to at least one, if not more. So with that, remember I was talking about the stereotype of how social impact careers workers would look like according to all of us when we were growing up. This is just one of the myths. Okay, we'll move on to the next slide where we're talking about what are the other myths that are currently associated. So number one, all right, every parent, every student, the first question they will ask or they will think of is, will this make money? Will I be able to make money in this career? Does it pay well? You will be surprised that social impact careers can actually be very, very lucrative. It is a myth. It's incorrect to say that social impact careers cannot be lucrative. They can be extremely lucrative, and now more than ever before, because you increasingly have more companies investing in social responsibility. So these are corporate backed social responsibility initiatives, CSR. You also have technology playing a huge role now in social impact careers. So a lot of social impact careers are now tech or I think sustainability driven. And those sectors like energy, etc., there is a lot of money in those sectors. They're looking for social impact professionals. The second myth is that they are easy and they are fun. No career is easy and fun. It could be fun though, because if you love something, they say that if you love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life. So sure enough, if you want to make social impact and you're passionate about it, a student is passionate about it, about positive impact, they will enjoy their work. And there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you should enjoy what you do, but they're not easy. No career is easy. Okay. There's a lot of emotional resilience. There's a lot of professionalism. It's like any other career. Social impact careers are, say, only for large companies. That's another myth. That's not true. There are all kinds of organizations, all sizes of organizations, and all kinds of industries that can create and that are creating roles in social impact. One of the last things that I really want to talk about is social care or social impact work is a low skilled profession. Like any job in the space is low skilled. That's not true. They often think that, if you are a BA graduate, then you should get into social impact. No, I'm sorry. Social impact work is extremely complex, requires a lot of skills, depends on what you're doing, but they are not low scale professions at all. All right. So moving on to the next slide, I'm just going to have a sip of water. Moving on to the next slide. So I don't know, I can't see. Yes. Can we move on to the next slide?
Is it not visible? It's about common
I
myths.
can only, no, that the next slide, I just covered the common myths. Yes. So one of the things that I also want to talk to you about before we get into the details of, what are the social impact careers, I think there is one myth that all social impact careers are in the space of not for profit, but that's not true. Okay. Your social impact careers across environment, data, technology. So these, what you see on your screen right now, are actually careers that exist right now in social impact. And if you do your research, I did my research on how much money do some of these make, and these are global salary levels, right? They're pretty well paying careers. So, an environmental data analyst, for example, that person has to analyze environmental data to address like pollution, climate change, and other environmental factors. A renewable energy engineer, and look at this is all tech, this is engineering. A renewable energy engineer, they design and they maintain renewable energy systems. Now these are social impact careers. Then you can actually be an engineer but have a social impact career. Then impact assessment. Essentially, you are evaluating and improving social and environmental impact of organizations. So you're doing audits, you're looking at how much social impact do organizations or companies have. That's called impact assessment. And then, of course, CSR, which is the most commonly heard of, corporate social responsibility, where large organizations and corporations have set up their foundations that either work in education, healthcare, whatever area they choose, and they make a difference in those spaces, right? So these careers already exist. If we move on to the next slide, I want to show you some of the other emerging ones, and I've segregated this into 2 or 3 different categories. So category 1 is, of course, AI and tech-driven roles. Now look at this. How fascinating is this? We are not talking about anything which is traditional. None of this is traditional. AI and tech-driven roles in social impact include AI healthcare. Okay, I've given the description under each one of what that career does. But AI healthcare specialist, data ethics is a huge area that organizations are spending millions of dollars on, because ensuring ethical usage of data and AI technology and addressing privacy concerns and looking at bias in algorithms is one of the biggest concerns and challenges of the Elon Musk and Sundar Pichais of the day. Okay, and they want to put the best minds in the world to make sure that they are addressing these concerns. A virtual reality experience designer, again, I'm not getting into the details of it, but AR and VR is on the uptake. And even in AR and VR, there is a huge element of ethics, all right, and making sure that these fields are not being taken advantage of, especially when you're using them in mental health education and fuels. They become social impact careers. We can move on to the next slide. Kritika, just a heads up, how much time do I have?
It'll be great if we could conclude in a minute. It's
okay. I will go through it very quickly. So I'm not going to go through the rest of the emerging careers. We can skip through these because there are a lot. You can see there's green and sustainability focus. We can go on to the next slide. Yeah, there's social and community impact roles. I'm just trying to tell you guys there is a lot of scope, okay? And there are across industries. We can move on to the next slide. Okay, these are some of the top industries where you are going to see a rise in social impact careers. And look at this healthcare, pharma, tech. I mean, the biggest industries in the world, right? They are going to create jobs in social impact. So you don't have to worry about scope and future in this. Go ahead. All right. So last, I'm going to end with this. In God we believe, everyone else must bring data. A very, very smart person has said that. So if we move on to the next slide, I will show you data. When I say there is a lot of scope, there is so much to do in social impact. Here's some data for you. Why are social impact careers on the rise? Number one, healthcare and social assistance. So employment in healthcare and social assistance has grown by 2.4% annually from 2010 to 2020. This is global numbers, and it's projected to continue growing. Then renewable energy, okay? Clean energy investments, which is non-fuel energy, investment in this sector has grown by 40%. And clean energy, by the way, employs clean energy means wind, solar, etc. It employs more people than fossil fuel. So clearly the world is moving towards renewable, sustainable energy. And last but not the least, education. There is going to be a 10% growth in education jobs, adding approximately 3 million more jobs by 2027. With that, I am going to come to the end of it. I think we're done. We can move on to the next slide. I hope I do not have anything else in there. Can we move to the next slide? Yes. And over to you, Kritika. I'm done. Thank you all. Sorry I took a few extra minutes. I got very passionate about what we were saying, but I hope all of you understand that social impact jobs are not a fad. They are the requirement of the world that we live in and the future. And thank you so much for this opportunity, Kritika. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Bhakti. I think that was phenomenal. And when we were talking about how people could create positive social impact through any career of choice, we saw examples of several industries and several job opportunities that, regardless of a student's core potential, whether their interests are aligned in a certain direction, their core values are pulling them a certain way, there is a path where their personal choice can create direct social impact. And thank you for sharing that overview of how it's possible through diverse set of career pathways. I now want to invite someone who's actually showing us how impactful it can be to work in the developmental sector and the nonprofit sector specifically. I think that in making career choices that align with one's personal values, there is such a key element of longevity associated to it. And when you're working on the ground to create these significant shifts, it really you can see the impact in magnifold. And I don't want to talk too much about it, but I'll be inviting him to share in just a moment. And I want to introduce you now to Mr. Devesh Verma, who's the head of Ola Foundation. He has a career that's spanning over 20 years in the development sector and has acquired an extensive expertise in diverse leadership roles. He successfully led large-scale technology-enabled transformation projects, crafted business strategies, funding strategies, executed field implementations, and collaborated with several NGOs at a state, central government, and international level as well. And now, as the head of Ola Foundation, he brings a profound passion for technology, public health, livelihood, and climate change. So first off, Mr. Devesh, a very, very warm welcome to you. I'm excited for our fireside chat. Shalaka, can I ask you to please stop the screen sharing for a moment?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Your journey is both inspiring as well as intriguing, because you've moved from a degree in engineering, which is the nation's perceived safe choice, to computer science, working in a conglomerate, and now you're heading one of the larger foundations in the nonprofit sector. Can you share a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to take up this pathway?
Sure. So thank you again for having me, for making me part of this esteemed panel. I will briefly touch upon my journey from where I started to where I am. To be very honest, I mean, this was something that I had not thought of, that, okay, this is what I will do as a career. But it slowly grew upon me. I was born in a very remote area. My dad used to work for Coal India Limited. So we always were posted in remote tribal areas, right? That's where my education happened. And then when I was done with my 12th, at that point of time, the generation I grew in, we only had two options. Either you could be a doctor or you could be an engineer, right? My dad also thought that I should at least try for civil services. So I started doing my BSc. But when I was done with my Bachelor of Science, I realized that I really want to be an engineer because my elder brother was an engineer. So after finishing my Bachelor of Science, I did my Bachelor of Engineering in Computer Science, and then went to US to do my Masters of Engineering in Masters of Science in Computer Science. Stayed there for slightly over a decade. And that is how my transition from a corporate to a not-for-profit world started. And that again, like I said, it was not planned per se. Later, I found out in my career that because I was working in health and in health tech, because I was a techie for the state of Massachusetts, we are considered as not-for-profits. That's when it started dawning upon me that, okay, now this is what I am working for. And then the work that I was doing then started making that connect, that we are trying to solve for those complex problems, right? We are trying to solve public health problems, which could be solved via tech at scale, and also creating that impact is how I looked at it. And then I stayed there, came back to India at around 2012, spent some time figuring out, traveling across India, then did a startup, co-founded a startup, again, did health tech solutions, mostly focusing on cancer tech, and did some bespoke application development, but we failed. And I have no shame or qualms in claiming that we failed as a startup after 5 years. But I guess the journey took me to another foundation, which is Piramal Swasth, which is part of Piramal Foundation, where I joined as a health tech chief technology officer. I think that was the time my transitioning from US to India, I started seeing that I really wanted to solve complex problems, right? Working with the doctors and doctor friends during our startup days to exploring India through Piramal Swasth, I unlearned a lot. I learned what India is. I learned what India's specific challenges are. As a techie, you tend to start solving everything. But then I learned that you cannot solve a technology. I mean, I'm not in the business of solving technology problem. I'm in the business of solving people problem. So that became sort of my purpose while traveling extensively across India, that we have to solve for these. We have to stop the mothers from dying. We have to stop infants from dying. We have to figure out a way to do changes in women sort of improving and not every 60% of the women not being anemic. What are those systems we need to build where technology can help us? Or how do I quickly identify undernourished or malnourished children at the village level who do not have access to facilities? That has changed my resolve and changed my purpose of trying to solve for it, trying to save lives. So I'm in the business of saving lives, is what I can say that as well. And then moved on from Piramal to join Apollo Telehealth as CTO, progressed to another organization called Social Alpha, and then eventually ended up here in Ola Foundation as the head of foundation, which gives me the opportunity to solve for intersections, because I believe problems cannot be solved in silos because we are such a complex country. So at Ola Foundation, we are trying to solve problems at the intersection of livelihood and health, which I will touch upon later. But that's the journey, not in a nutshell, but sort of, yeah, a bigger shell than a nut.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think, when we theoretically think about what it means to create social impact, and then we understand a very real journey like yours behind it, it shares so much insight into what sparks someone to recognize what they really value, and then find actionable pathways to put that into action, and then execute that in a way that leverages your strengths and your skills, but also then translates into very measurable, meaningful impact in the community. So thank you so much for sharing that through your story. And because you're working now, deep in the development sector from your transition of moving through various organizations, I think one of the myths I'm curious to ask you about is people have this preconceived notion that if you're associated to an NGO or any nonprofit foundation, that you are, a social worker who has a kurta and a jola, and this is the preconceived picture associated to anyone working in the nonprofit sector. So can you share if this is first of all true or not, and what is the real picture of what it means to work in the social sector, and what kind of opportunities really exist today across nonprofits that people can work on leveraging their skills?
Sure. So to be very honest, does that stereotypical image exist? Yes, it does. But nothing wrong in that image, to be very honest, right? If you look at the area where most of the NGOs operate, which is grassroots, underserved, unserved communities, right? That dress code also becomes relatable, right? At times, if I go to a tribal area dressed in my jeans and a t-shirt, I am anyway out and an alien, right? And if I'm trying to solve their problem, there is a disconnect. But if I'm dressed in something which they have some notion about that, okay, kurta is something which is relatable, it makes the conversation easy. But having said that, I like to wear my t-shirts and jackets and my jeans as well. So there is nothing set in terms of dress code. I think what's more important is the attitude that you bring in, the passion that you bring in, and less of an attire. But it varies from person to person. So yes, part of it exists, but that does not actually mean that it's true. In terms of what do we get when we start working in the social sector, right? A lot of what Bhakti spoke about applies to it. There are multiple different avenues that you can pick and choose from and where you want to be. Social sector is not, there's another notion that social sector is for people who either were trying to be someone, couldn't be that person, hence that this was, this became the primary source of their employment. That's not the case. I have met some of the smartest of the people who are highly qualified working with a resolve to solve societal problems. So yeah, it depends upon, is it your calling? Have you thought through it? Or have you spent time on, thinking about, I want to also solve for bigger problems? For example, it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to wait for an apple to fall from the tree to make a disruptive discovery. It could be Saji looking at a coconut leaf and thinking of, hey, there could be something which could solve a societal problem, which is from the environmental point of view as well. So likewise, there are multiple different problems. I think the challenge is that we don't talk much about these problems. For example, if I give you an instance that 6 out of 10, close to 6 out of 10 women in India are anemic in the age group of 15 to 45. So that becomes a problem when you start looking into it. And that becomes a huge problem because we are now talking about adolescent health and the health of the woman when they get into childbearing age, right? Because there is a risk for both. So how do you solve for those? So when you look at that problem, you're trying to solve for health. And then, like I said, we work at the intersection of health and livelihood. You have to give people enough for them to earn, to be able to spend on their health. And you can't do that without solving for the livelihood problem. So people who join the social sector come from a variety of experiences who can create these opportunities or find those undiscovered simplicities where those white spaces lie, for which solutions are needed. It could be in livelihood, it could be in climate, it could be in agriculture, it could be in health, it could be in technology. I have been a technologist. We have been trying to solve for data collection problem for health at the ground level, and we've been, it's been really difficult because your challenge at the ground level is not technology. Your challenge at the ground level is how do people buy into technology? So there is scope for people who are specialists in behavior health. There is again scope for people who are specializing in mental health as well. So, like I said, there are tons of opportunities exist, irrespective of where you come from. Even if you are a doctor, there are opportunities for you to solve for societal problems. You could be a doctor in an MD community medicine who is specializing in solving health problems at a community level. You could be an engineer. You could be a structural engineer and trying to figure out how infrastructure works. You could be a data scientist as well. So like I said, a lot of what I am speaking right now, Bhakti already touched on upon these. There are opportunities. It's just that we have to start thinking about what else lies out of the common and what is the norm, and look at those adjacent possibilities.
Thank you for sharing. And it just got me thinking that there seem to be three things that you're saying are very critical to work in this sector, right? One is just fundamental care and the thirst to solve a problem, because that is just an innate quality that makes somebody seek out opportunities that they can go and contribute towards. The second is that they don't have to feel like academic background has anything to do with the area that you can create impact in, that it's a multidisciplinary lateral approach where people can serve across sectors. And the third, and this I just picked up more subliminally from what you were sharing, is also the appetite for discomfort a little bit, because you have to be ready to see a problem for what it is, be in that space, and then be ready to solve for it after understanding the impact that it can create, right?
I will also add one more thing. There is an element of delayed gratification at times. But if you know, if your purpose is to solve a bigger problem, which is a societal problem, these things take time. But it's worth fighting that fight.
Oh, absolutely. You're right. And I think that that the appetite to do that and the ability to hold that fort to get to that point, I think is an incredibly important quality for someone to have. So in the context of the projects that you have now been working on, can you share what type of professionals you work with who come from different backgrounds, and do they have a formal education or experience in any way in the nonprofit sector, or what kind of skill sets and qualities do they bring to you?
You're right. So wide variety of skills. It depends upon at what layer we are thinking of. If I'm thinking of field operations, for example, there are people who in my team at the field level who are qualified people who have done masters in social work. Now, if I move a layer up in terms of operations, I can have people from variety of fields who could have done their MBAs are looking at operations, who are tech folks who are looking at tech operations or support, right? I have worked with doctors who were looking at telemedicine consultations. I have worked with doctors who are community medicine specialists, right? I have worked with data scientists. I have worked with amazing technologists when we were building those tech systems in my previous organization. So I cannot think or single out a single qualification or single professional or non-professional qualification where an avenue cannot be found to work in social sector. It's agnostic to your qualification, because the problem is so big that it has room for everyone to do something or contribute towards. So yeah, I mean, like I said, if you're looking at, let's say if somebody gets into farm-based activities, correct? There is a huge opportunity for farm-based livelihood to think through it, right? Somebody who is looking at, like, let me go back to Saji's example, right? He has two kids who are completely non-tech, are now looking at something which is part tech as well, right? So there is an opportunity for you to also look at or pick a societal problem. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to work in the social sector or development sector. You can pick that societal problem and solve it as an entrepreneur as well. So there is a different avenue to solve a societal problem by becoming an entrepreneur. So it's a completely different journey. But are you creating an impact? Of course, yes. You could be doing waste management. You could be doing something, solving a climate problem where you have built a tech which you as an entrepreneur want to monetize, which you can do, but you're solving a bigger problem. So social has a broader definition. It just doesn't mean that you have to be part of a not-for-profit or a charitable trust or any other organization who has a CSR. You have multiple ways to solve for it and have a very thriving career in it.
Thank you so much. I think that this brings us to a very important junction, because this conversation, right, about how people who have diverse backgrounds, like being a data scientist or a medical professional, can have personal growth and development and create impact, is not a conversation we're having in school as a regular format of counseling conversations, right? It's not, when we talk about the top 20 career pathways, we're not talking about the profession in light of what it can do for society. So these examples and the illustrations you've shared have been really great in connecting that dots. And with that, I want to ask you the last question, which is, how do we ensure that schools can prepare students? So how can counselors work with preparing students to build more exposure or awareness of these possibilities? How can they help them cultivate the right mindset also, the right skills and the qualities to pursue a path in this domain?
Right. I will, so before I go to the counselors, Kritika, I will just touch upon a different layer where you as your own self imbibe certain values which come from your family, right? So parents are also important when they give you the value of empathy, when they give you the value system of compassion and respect and whatnot, right? I think for counselors, it is also important to leverage those, but build their narrative around how, let's take Saji's success story. There are multiple success stories which can be showcased to the parent and the child that, hey, there is a lot of scope and there is a world out there where you have opportunities where the kid can do a lot of those things. So I think it's also important to educate the parents around why taking a risk, be it an entrepreneurial risk, or why looking at a career in social sector is also important. Or if you look at it, having a professional career, but the thought in the kid's mind that I can contribute and I can be empathetic, I can be, I have all the elements of humility and I can solve for a societal problem while earning a decent amount of money while I'm doing something. That is also important. So specifically for counselors, what I feel, showcasing success stories, that how people have gone up with multiple different qualifications and done something good in serving the society. Teaching them how to look at or inculcate the habit of, like I said, empathy and compassion. Uh, Suggesting them to maybe volunteer and understand that what volunteering brings to the table, right? Or being an intern while they are studying what they are studying. It also opens up the avenue of them understanding how a third sector, which is the development sector, operates. It's about bringing in more information. I think I may be completely wrong, but I think the more awareness you create around what variety of opportunities are available, then your ability to pick and choose becomes easy. And success stories also feed in that, like I said. They give parents and the child a comfort that there is a pathway there. It's not something, it's not a cul-de-sac that I go and it's a dead-end tunnel. There, I can grow in my career. I can be anyone who I want, but I can still contribute and serve and still do what I wanted to do. So that's how would I sort of suggest the counselors to take it forward.
No, thank you so much, because that's very practical and insightful and also hands-on, because without first-hand experience, it's very hard to visualize or theorize what it could mean to work in the dev sector. And I think a nice tip would also be based on Devesh sir's recommendation. If a student were doing a community service project or an internship, it's a good opportunity to go talk to the professional working in that NGO or in that service project and say, okay, what is your role? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? What are some skills you think I should have to work in this space like this, and what is the growth potential for it? These are simple questions that can be conversation starters on a field visit that a student can do.
Yes.
That would really pivot possibilities. But yeah, I'd love to invite any closing remarks that you have before inviting our next speaker.
I mean, I won't take too much time. I don't know how much time I have left, but all I can say is that it's a combined effort, right? It takes a village to raise a kid, and I think with the counselors, they are in a position where they can shape up the destiny of a child, but also give him or her enough to understand how they can contribute towards solving bigger problems or solving problems of the society which they're part of. I think it's important for us to have a generation which is more aware. While technically, from an information point of view, they are aware around what's happening, but also giving them a reality check of there are other problems which need to be solved for. So the more talent we have, that's something which I sort of face when I'm hiring talent. So I need more people looking at this sector so that I have more talent to hire, and then more people to come and work collaboratively to solve these societal problems. That's how I would end it.
Thank you so much. I think that's so powerful. I do hope that we can see that even in our role right now as a counselor or educator, you have the potential to create this multitude of effect by maybe adopting a school in your local community that you can share these insights with, or encouraging your students to go teach other students in the schools that you will be volunteering in. So thank you for showing us the web of potential that can exist when we just open our eyes, look around, and look for a problem to solve. And with that, I'd love to now invite our last speaker for the day, Dr. Gargi Mitra. Dr. Gargi is going to be sharing expertise from a school point of view because she's leading a group of schools, and I think we'll get some really nice insights from her on how to transition this knowledge into an application in schools. But before that, a quick introduction of Dr. Gargi. She is the director of the Symbiosis Society of Schools, and she has over 12 years of experience as a teacher educator. She's an approved counselor and project guide for the IGNOU B.Ed courses and certified in Neuro-Linguistic Programming by the National Federation of Neuro-Linguistic Programming in the US. With over 14 research papers published and attendance in over 50 academic events, she has notable involvement in university-level duties, including paper setting, examination, and committee memberships as well. And she has authored study materials for the Symbiosis Center for Distance Learning and serves on the Board of Studies for the St. Mira's College for Girls. So, Gargi ma'am, welcome. Thank you so much for being here with us. And I just want to request you to share with us what are some recommendations you can give us to now translate all of this learning, right, that we have received from our previous speakers and look at making systemic changes at a policy and functional level in schools to make counseling practices well integrated in the systems and aligned with the recommendations in our new national education policy as well. So I'd like to invite you to please share that. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Kritika. It was a treat today to listen to all the speakers, right from Dr. Saha to Mr. Devesh. And thank you for inviting me. Thank you, IC3. Thank you, CBSE. I'm not sure how much time I have, Kritika, but I do understand we are pressed for time. And I'll try to put my points forth, but also try to be quite concise. And fortunately, being the last speaker, the stage has been set, the context has been given. I really do not need to go and talk about the background, why we are talking about what we are talking today. However, to begin with, I'll definitely tell what, since you have asked about the national education policy, yes, definitely the base of all that we are talking, the hype that has been created is post the national education policy. And of the vision statement, if you have a look at the national education policy, one part of it very, very clearly mentions it's a conscious awareness of one's roles and responsibilities in the changing world. This is something that the national education policy is very, very, strongly advocating. And with this as a background, I would go straight to your question. So, Kritika, while the national education policy has been saying this or has quoted this, all said and done, what in short we are talking about today is a change of culture. It's a upheaval. It's a huge change in culture that we're talking about, and that comes when we have a change in the curriculum, the skill set, and the mindset. So all together, we are talking about a 21st century skill, and the skills I need not repeat because they have been very, very clearly mentioned by the previous speakers. But yes, it's all about the knowledge, the life skills, the career skills, the habits, the traits. All together, they is what we are looking at. Also, to set the context, I'll tell you something that the national education policy does talk about all the contemporary subject. And I think everything that was being spoken about by even Mr. Saji was actually design thinking. So national education policy has very, very clearly mentioned that depending on the relevant stages, we need to focus on, art integration, organic living, then design thinking, holistic health, and all these things as a background. But now, if I have to very categorically give some takeaways, I'd like to tell you something. Setting the context is fine, but when it comes to the implementation of it at the school level, it cannot be generalized. It has to be done at every stage. It's very stage specific. And again, what the National Education Policy talks about is the 5+3+3+4. So every stage will have a different way of implementation. But since you're the audiences, are the counselors, I will have to tell that the counselors alone cannot do it, as we all have realized. They are just the catalyst. It's a group effort. It's a collective responsibility. And when we talk about collective responsibility, though we are aiming every individual, we start with the individual, we go towards teams and groups, we reach the community level, then the national, and then the global level. So that's what we are aiming at, a citizenship. So I would like to show an acronym that will talk about what is it that I want the audience to take away today. But definitely, as per NEP, we are looking at a definitive shift in the school education. And this shift can, in short, I've tried to sum it up into 4 main heads. And the acronym goes as CARE. If I would request you to just take the next slide. Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm going to be very specific about the techniques that I would want to speak about. Talking about CARE, the very first, the C here would stand for cultivating self-directed learners. So ultimately, I'll tell you what is it that I want to give. I want to have a takeaway as cultivating self-directed learners, advocating value-based courses, that is A stands for that, R would stand for reinforcing collective responsibility, and finally E would stand for empowering through experience. So let's have a quick look at what each of them would mean to us when it comes to schools. To begin with, may I go to the first slide? Request? Yeah, thank you so much. Here, there are just a few pointers that I have given, but when we talk about cultivating self-directed learners, I'll start with what we can actually begin by doing, and something that I can say that very confidently because it is something that we are doing in our schools. So NEP has again stated about the progress cards, and that also a holistic 360-degree progress cards, which would assess the learner's cognitive, affective, psychomotor domain, everything. So yes, we need to have some kind of a drastic change, but progress card cannot be just what the teacher puts in that. It has to be a progress card that also has self-assessment and peer assessment. It has to be something where I can track the growth of the student throughout the school years and prepare them for the world of work outside school. So here, if I have to give you very, very specific strategies, I can tell you so let's say they are the early years learners. So since we have a group of schools and they are right from early years till the standard 12th, that is the secondary education, I can say that we can have them. So let's say we have choice-based learning centers. Basically, we need to keep rotating the activities daily and expose these children to choose what they would want to do on a particular day. Well, this applies only for the early years, though you cannot have it for the middle school and the higher school. So when we talk about choice-based learning center, they can be based on their reading, art, science exploration, or something extra. So it can be a structured exploration. It can also be an unstructured exploration. But the objective here is very clear that we want to encourage the natural curiosity of the learner. See, this is just the first step. Another thing before I miss it out, I must say, a misconception, a myth is that career talk can happen only once we reach the secondary level. I believe we need to forget that. Career talk or the preparation or the mindset needs to begin right from the early years. And that's why I'm very clear about when I put this point about choice-based learning centers. You cannot start talking careers after the student reaches standard 8th or 9th. It has to begin early. And this is how we can begin. We can have project-based learning. Allow them to take ownership of their learning. It's important. Yes, you have your checkpoints. Definitely. It's a much needed thing. You give them the resources, but let them set their own goals. Create action plans and track their progress. Make them accountable. This is important as this child grows higher towards the middle school. Okay, ensure that you have set the outline. You can also go for learning contracts. So important. It's a contract between the teacher and the student, between the counselor and the student, or between a group of them. They make their own outline. They know what they have to do. They decide how they want to plan their learning, and then they demonstrate that. They demonstrate that with certain do's and don'ts, which is a part of the contract. See, this session does not allow me to go into depth into any of these techniques. So these are just names and a few, these are just the tip of the iceberg part that I'm talking about. But yes, definitely each of these techniques can take an hour if we have to actually talk about them. So these contracts can be very flexible, but it will make the student responsible at the end of the day. Very important part in making them self-directed learners is having reflective journals. Reflection, nothing works better than reflection. Use prompts. Yes, you can use prompts to guide their reflection. Help them to develop the metacognitive skills. Create opportunities for them so that they can reflect. I'll come to one example as soon as I'm done with a few techniques. So we can also think about peer learning, peer teaching. Create opportunities. Ensure that the students teach each other. Maybe very small concepts, very small ideas, but it's important that they start that. They take ownership. Everything is aimed towards direction, self-direction. But as the student grows higher up, when they come to the secondary school, ensure that you include opportunities for internships, job shadowing, independent research projects, because by now, hopefully you have built the base. The child knows what the child is expecting, but do not leave the child. It's important here, counselors, you need to mentor them. Very important. Pair the students with mentors, have regular mentor meetings. Now, when I say mentor, need not necessarily always be the counselor. Just help student, ensure that the scaffolding is done. And in general, apart from this, it's important for creating self-directed learners that you create a proper classroom environment. Very, very important, where questioning can be encouraged and valued. It's important that you value their questions, however you may feel about the question coming in. Please value what they have to say. Provide a constructive feedback and immediate feedback. You cannot be waiting for the feedback at the end of a particular session. Encourage them to assess their own self and the peer feedback. Okay, and another very important thing when I talk about this point is resource accessibility. There's no point in me showing that I have this lab, that lab, that lab. You may have 100 of labs, but what's the use if the student is not given the access to it? So it's extremely important even for the student to have cultivate the self-directed self-direction, that you give them the access to those resource rooms. I'll quickly tell you something. So what we do, one small example. So we ensure that all our students, and when we say students, I'll give you the example of the lowest grade student. That's a standard 1 and 2. For each and every concept that we teach in our schools, we ensure there is a reflection. They decide what they want to. Of course, the nudge is there from the teachers. They decide how they want to study, and at the end of an event or at the end of a unit, they discuss. They discuss what went right, what went wrong. As I said, I don't have that luxury of time today. Otherwise, I would have shown the kind of worksheets that the standard 1 child fills up, gives a proper feedback about what went well for the lesson. And it's all individual. There is nobody judging the child. Even if the child writes that I did not enjoy the lesson, that's perfectly fine. Okay, so a very recent thing, in Pune, we have a 1,000-year-old tradition called as the Palki. So those who know of this tradition will know that what it is. So when we asked the children recently in this one of the sessions that what do you think? What do you think who are these Varkaris? We were shocked because the children came up with answers like Varkaris are homeless people, teacher. They are people who do not get food to eat. I'm not getting into the process of what we did, but we ensured that this is how they come up with their first level of questions, and slowly we take it to the next level. Yeah. So there are multiple ways of how we can do it. Now going to the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. Advocating value-based careers. Now this is something I would really not want to talk much about because I believe all the previous speakers have spoken about it, and Bhakti for sure has gone in depth. So that helps me, saves the time. But quickly, a few strategies. Yes, if I'm talking about very early years, we can talk, we can use stories, we can use fables. Once upon a time in my school, we used to have moral science. I remember that was not graded, but yes, we had. So we can use stories, we can convey moral lesson, we can highlight the value in the story and encourage them to reflect. Again, reflection is a key. You have no way out. Then role plays. It's important that you set up scenarios, you give them scenarios, you help them practice empathy, let them share, let them come up with a problem, let them solve the problem. You are there as a guide, always. I mean, that's no taking away. But yes, it's important that you ensure that the idea behind it is advocating a value-based career. So for that, it's important they know what is a value. What value are they as a person standing for? Are we as an individual standing for? As we as a society standing for? Yes, I think previous speakers have spoken about service projects. So let's give opportunity to our students to practice such kind of values. They may be generosity, empathy, civic responsibility, something I really find it lacks civic sense. It's simple things. Just take them to the local parks. Like we have a small, nice garden just adjacent to our school. So there are times we just take our students over there. They can clean up those parks. They can visit some senior citizen centers. It's all about, it can be any kind of projects and different levels. As I said, the early years may have a different kind of a project. The secondary school students may have a different kind of a project. But what's important here is the discussion. Simply taking them there and showing them around is not enough. It's important they come back, they discuss what are the values that, or what are the feelings, what are the emotions they went through. Let them know the meaning of the word. I mean, words like integrity. What do you mean by respect? What do you mean by being unbiased? It's important that they know. Something very important that we can do at the high school level is, I enjoy talking about this, ethical dilemma debates. You know, these are the debates where we put forth in front of them some ethical questions. So anything can be the answer, but let them justify. It is important that they know this is the society we live in. It's neither black and white. They are gray. Okay, you will come across all kinds of people, all kind of situation. Encourage them to respect and tolerate different perspectives. It's important as a counselor, as a teacher, I do that. Only then can they go towards that value-based careers that we are talking about. Pair them, have mentorship programs, let them share their experiences, let them, I mean, it's important that we do not judge them. Otherwise, they will say what they know will be acceptable. That's extremely crucial here when we say, it's not just the academic knowledge, but have them service learning projects where the real world issues are being discussed. And again, come back to reflection. I believe reflection is a key. Reflect on the impact that their project would make or has made, whatever it is. We can also have an ethics course. Okay, I mean, I'm talking about the high school students here. We can think about offering some kind of a short-term course which talks about ethics. So again, it's not the teaching kind of a teaching. It's important that the moral theories, the moral applications, the dilemmas that as a human we do have, we are always faced with choices. And under such a situation, what we can do, how we can overcome that and develop a career that gives us fulfillment, that gives us satisfaction. Okay, so it's important here that we model them. I cannot just be preaching. I say something, I go back and they see me doing something else. So it's important as teachers, counselors, administrators, we all consistently model those things that we are talking about. Only then can we expect to instill that in the students. So we can also think about, you know, those value recognition programs where we celebrate such kind of values. That's the next point over here. So we celebrate values. It's okay. You may or may give certificates, but recognition is important. It's important that you highlight the very specific reasons, the behaviors that you think or their peers think that has earned them this recognition. Why? So, and for that, you cannot have a day for celebrating those values, definitely. So we need to have a value integrated curriculum here. again, these all points may require a lot of discussion in depth. So I'll request you to go to the next slide. I'm trying to make it as fast as possible. Yeah, thank you. So the care, the R here would stand for reinforcing collective responsibility. I believe a little bit has been spoken about this too. But here by collective responsibility, I mean, you cannot expect only the counselors to help the students navigate through the careers that would be socially lucrative, I mean, socially beneficial as well as lucrative to them. But it's important that the entire community comes together, as rightly said by Devesh, and as we all say, it requires an entire village to raise a child. Very true, very true. So it's important that the counselors and as teachers, we influence the parental mindset. It's important that they support such kind of socially impactful career choices. And that's why this third point about reinforcing collective responsibility. Whatever we do in the 6 hours that the child is with us, it's just those 6 hours. Ultimately, let's not forget they go back to their homes. They have their own ways of, they have their own dynamics at home. And it's important that when we are talking about a collective responsibility, we involve everybody. When I say everybody, apart from the school, all the other stakeholders, let's involve the community, the alumni, the volunteers. It can be anybody and everybody that you can think of. So in our schools, we try and invite as many community people wherever. See, we don't, I mean, we just happen to ensure that whatever we are teaching, whatever we are doing, we do create such opportunities where we can invite such people to our schools. We don't have to decide on a day, but whenever we are making an academic calendar, we ensure that we do that. But that apart, for them to even understand what the meaning of collective responsibility is, we can start small. We can help, we can have team activities, we can have team bonding. You can just highlight on what it means to come together, what it means to collaborate. So of course, we can have community service projects, but then assign roles to them. It's important that we assign roles and responsibilities to each group member. It should not be that just because it's a group work, 2 of them are doing the entire thing and the others are just hanging around. So no, that doesn't work that way. It is like we sink or swim together. Okay, so assign roles and responsibility, it's important. Classroom is a cluster, let's not forget. So peer mentoring would also help them. And yes, inviting parents very often, as and when. So at the start of the year, what we do is we circulate a small Google form to our parental community where we take in what are they good at, irrespective of whatever their educational background may be. It's important that we ensure that the parents' love and passion for what they are doing is important. And over the year, whenever we find a right opportunity, we invite those parents. So one activity that we do in our schools is Wonderful Wednesdays. So usually this is a bagless day, especially I'm talking about the foundational years and the primary years. Our students do not bring bags on that day. And this is the day when we develop all kinds of, so it's a skill-based activity day. And this is the day where we invite our community people. They can be a potter, can be a parent who has a passion for photography. Last year, we had a parent who had been to Antarctica, so came and showed all the photographs. We had different parents who come and share their passion. So even photography can be a career, and you can photograph for the right reasons. It need not be a social media photography, okay? I mean, I'm not saying that's not right, but we can always, and these are the ways how we give them the real life examples. We ensure that they get to see the real life heroes, and they get to see that, okay, there are different ways of looking at a particular thing. So again, for the same thing, it's important as they go higher up, we introduced service learning initiatives. We have ethics, social responsibility courses. Now, when I say courses, of course, in schools, you don't need to have a course like this. It can be an after-school workshop. It can be, let's say, a monthly meeting. Okay, another thing that we do is we have clubs in our school. We ensure that these clubs are aligned to the UN's Sustainability Development Goals, the SDGs, the 17 SDGs that we have, and each child, they choose their own club. It is not that it has to be equal, that, okay, fine, no, we cannot accommodate so many, nothing of that sort. We have very thoughtfully offered them the clubs, and that's a practice, well, we just started from last year, so we are learning, we are very new in that, but we do celebrate the collective achievements also during these different kinds of things that we do, the community service efforts that we take in. We celebrate all those sports victory. Ultimately, what we want to showcase is everything is a collective responsibility. So we have buddy systems, and again, coming back to reflection. So reflection doesn't lose our sight. Regular reflection and sharing sessions is a must. We do not have any specific time and date for reflection activities. However, yes, it's true that as and when we get time, we ensure that every child, again, we do not force the child. Only if a child really wants to come and reflect and come up with those things, we do that. Okay, now going to the last part of it, empowering through experience. May I request you to go to the, yes.
Sorry, ma'am, Dr. Gargi, just a quick time check. We have a minute to wrap up if you
Great.
could.
So I think I will just end with this then. So we do have field trips where we talk about this empowering through experience. So we go to places where they can actually see what our community is like, indigenous things. We have mud activities where they create things. Well, there are a lot of things that we do in our schools. I would have loved to really tell them. But yes, role playing is one such thing. We help them see how a store is managed. I mean, you can also take them to a farm, take them to a small, I mean, we have a nice museum over here, Zapurza Museum. So we take our kids over there. That's a beautiful place. It's not a typical museum. You can Google it and find out. So we give them all kinds of exposure where they can empower through the experience, but it's all in a safe and controlled environment. Again, we ensure that they start small businesses and they have projects. So well, it's endless. Through this, we teach them budgeting, we teach them marketing, we teach them management skills. I mean, all these things are a part of it. So I hope you will understand that this is not the end of it. There are a lot. Well, yes, maker spaces is something I really cannot miss. Maker spaces is important because here the students work on creating projects, they make things. I'll tell you, I had just one last quick thing I need to speak. I had been to a school a few years back where they had displayed a few questions on their notice board right at the entry. These questions were real life problems that the school was actually facing. The school faced a problem, like they had a midday meal scheme and they did not know when the gas cylinder would just go empty, and at the crucial time they had to fix the gas cylinder again, get something. So they put a question on the notice board saying, can you help us find a solution to this? Then they said, okay, the cat comes every day in the kitchen, they drinks milk. And I was so amazed to see that school displaying all their real life problems, and it was open to the students to actually come and share their ideas and actually come and create the real world solution, the problem. Last thing, something again very recently that has happened, we were doing in our schools about the elements of a story and how stories should be written, etc. And that's when we realized a day later, one of the student standard 2's child comes up with a storybook. I'm sure this child is going to grow up and become an author. And the storybook was so right from her heart, whatever she felt, soon after we had this session on how to write a story. Well, Kritika, I would like to end it. Otherwise, there are n number of examples that I can go on and on. But if you ask me to just wind up in one thing, I believe, you know what? We need to also rethink our assessment strategies. When all said and done, all this is doable. The counselors alone are helpless. Because we are all teaching for the exams. Still, we are teaching for the exams in spite of all these things. So if we can rethink some authentic and real life assessment strategies, I'm sure that would be a great add-on to this entire effort that we are taking. Thank you, Kritika.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gargi. I think your segment really nicely rounded up where we started at the beginning of the day with some very practical examples of how to help students build self-awareness, give them exposure of opportunities in the world of work and higher education, and then give them experiential learning opportunities to then be able to make the right fit choices for themselves. So thank you so much for rounding out our session with some very practical insights. I want to also apologize for us collectively overshooting the time, and thank you so much for your patience, for your engagement on the YouTube chat. I can see that there were several comments that came through. And in the interest of time, I just wanted to share that the feedback form has been posted on the registration link. So kindly make sure to go to the registration link to fill the feedback form and the quiz for today's session so you can acquire the certification. And I'd like to now invite Ekta from the CBSE team to share a quick vote of thanks before we close the session for the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Gargi.
Hi everyone, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Hi, good evening everyone. So as we conclude this transformative workshop, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each of you for your active participation and unwavering commitment to enhancing the career counseling landscape. And I would like to thank Saha sir and Saji sir for highlighting the essential role counselors play in shaping a generation of informed and purpose-driven individuals. And not to forget our expert panelists, Gagi ma'am, Bhakti ma'am, and Devesh sir. Your contribution to this workshop has been invaluable, and we are very grateful for the time and effort you invested in sharing your expertise with us. So, thank you once again for your significant contribution and for inspiring us to thrive towards better counseling practices that contribute positively to the overall well being and personal development of the students. Thank you so much for being a part of this workshop and looking forward to more such wonderful workshop sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ekta. And I just want to see if Neeti ma'am would like to say a few concluding words. Otherwise, we are happy to conclude the session.
I think at this point, since we've already overshooted, and my only one-liner at the end would be looking forward to the next session, same time, same place on 24th of July. That would be for the parents. So stay tuned. Thank you so much, and have a good day.